Good evening, everyone. My name is Wayne Benna, and I serve as Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, and I'd like to welcome you here for this public forum. This meeting is subject to the open meetings laws of the state of Nebraska, and notice of this meeting was published in the Omaha World Herald, advising that a public hearing be held on initiative measures 437 and 438 on this date beginning at 6 p.m. at the Thompson Alumni Center. A copy of the notice will be made a part of the public record and is hereby made part of the public hearing record for this evening, including a proof of publication from the Omaha World Herald. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Law is displayed on the easel to my right, your left. An agenda and materials prepared for the public in the form of pamphlets are available at the door. The Secretary of State's office is required by law to conduct this hearing for the purposes of receiving comments from proponents and opponents and from members of the public on initiative measures 437 and 438 concerning medical cannabis that will appear on the November 5th, 2024 general election ballot. Appearing with me is Jackie Oreda, Public Information Officer for the Secretary of State's office, and Mia Sanderson, a UNO college student who greeted you at the front door. She will be at the entrance and will be happy to assist you with any information or questions. I'd also like to introduce our court reporter, Denise Lucas-Savage, who will be making the official record of tonight's proceedings. This evening's hearing covers the 2nd Congressional District for Initiatives 437 and 438. We are required to have a hearing on each initiative in each of the 3 congressional districts. I'm not going to be acting as a judge where I make rulings on evidence or rulings on who's right or who's wrong. I'm serving as strictly a moderator, according to law, to ensure that we have an orderly proceeding for the benefit of those in attendance and especially for the benefit of the court reporter. In a moment, we will have 10-minute opening statements from a recognized proponent and a recognized opponent of the initiative measures. After that, we will allow citizens to testify, alternating between proponents and opponents of the measures. When you came into the room, you were asked to sign in if you wish to testify. After the opening statements, I'll begin with those who signed in, and after that, if there's time, I'll ask to see if anyone who did not sign in who wishes to testify. Can I ask who intends to testify in the room today, if you can raise your hand? Okay. Based on that, I will allow for 5 minutes of testimony, but depending upon if more people come throughout the night, I may limit it to 3 minutes in order to get through everyone. We will continue with everyone on the wish to testify, or we reach 8:40 p.m., whichever comes first. Afterwards, the recognized proponent and the recognized opponent will give their closing statements. When I call you up to come forward to testify, I'll ask you to state your name and spell it for the record and state whom you represent if you're representing an organization. This helps ensure that the court reporter can accurately reflect your testimony. For some of you, this may be the first time that you've ever spoken in front of a public body. This event is being live streamed on YouTube, so you might get a little bit nervous and tend to want to talk a little bit faster. I've been doing this for 20 years and I talk really fast when I got on a script. The court reporter may pause you for a second to have you slow down or clarify the sentence that you said. Don't be alarmed. You're not in trouble. It's just so that we can have an accurate record of today's proceedings. I will be timing each testifier. We need to be conscious of the fact there are other people who wish to testify and they have a reasonable chance to do so. When you have 1 minute remaining, I have this very sophisticated 1-minute notice to let you know that you have 1 minute. Once you've completed your 5 minutes, I'll ask you to wrap it up so we can get on to other testifiers. If you have a question, write out your question and hand it to one of the folks at the front desk, and we'll look through them and try to raise the most pertinent questions with one of the recognized speakers when they make their closing remarks. As required by law, the Secretary of State's office has produced an official pamphlet for each ballot measure. The pamphlets have the text, the ballot language, and the arguments for and against the ballot measures provided to us by sponsors and recognized opponents. We have a number of these pamphlets available here tonight that are located at the front door. Mia can assist you. Pamphlets are also available at the Secretary of State's office at the state capitol and at the Election Division office, 13 and M Street in the Lincoln. Also, all county election offices across the state have these pamphlets as well. You can also download copies from our website, sos.nebraska.gov. A staff member can give you that site info if you'd like to have it for reviewing or downloading this information. At this time, if you could make sure that your cell phones are turned off or to silent to make sure that they won't interrupt or any testifiers during today's proceedings. This is including mine, just making sure, and it wasn't. So that's why we say it. Having said all of that, I would now ask a representative of the sponsors of the petition, Krista Eggers, to please come forward to give her opening statement.
Hello, my name is Krista Eggers, Crista, Eggers, Eggers, and I'm the campaign manager for Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana, representing a vote for 437 and 438. I've been given the honor to represent Nebraskans for medical marijuana as a ballot sponsor tonight, and will be speaking tonight both in my role as a campaign manager, but also on behalf of the patients in our state and the over 115,000 people who have signed each of our initiatives to place it on the ballot as initiatives 437 and 438. I'm going to start by giving you a brief overview of why we are here today. If you look around the room, the people here and their stories are why we are here. Over 10 years ago, parents, caregivers, and patients themselves began fighting for safe and regulated medical cannabis. It started with just a handful of brave souls who were watching their children suffer from debilitating health conditions and whom had run out of traditional treatment options. These parents saw the help that patients in other states were receiving through medical cannabis treatment. And they said, we won't stop fighting until our children and all of the suffering patients in our state have the same option. That was over 10 years ago. It was 7 legislative bills ago and 3 ballot initiatives ago. It was over 700,000 signatures ago that have been collected from Nebraskans. The citizens of Nebraska have said they want compassionate options to lessen it and relieve, and in some cases even save the life of their loved ones. Initiatives 437 and 438 are about them. These initiatives are for them, and November 5th will be about them. You see, this fight isn't political. It isn't about money or power. It's about taking care of the most vulnerable people in our state that we call home. I'm going to challenge everyone in this room right now to think of someone close to them. I'd like you to now imagine that person suffering from cancer and the horrific effects of chemotherapy, fighting the debilitating symptoms of ALS or Parkinson's. Maybe it's someone who bravely fought for our country and that PTSD has not allowed them a full night's sleep in decades. For children who experience uncontrolled seizures that threaten their life daily, despite trying every medication and other approved treatment option available to them. I stand before you today representing these patients and their families. Initiatives 437, the Patient Protection Act, and 438, the Medical Cannabis Regulation Act, are a pair of initiatives that together provide a safe and regulated medical system for patients to be recommended cannabis by their healthcare practitioner. It will also allow them to have legal and safe access to cannabis as a medicine. People in the state of Nebraska not only deserve the right to this treatment option, but we know that they overwhelmingly support it. Our campaign has been to every county, district, and village across this state, speaking with citizens who have shared their stories of why these initiatives are so important. And it's not just anecdotal. Poll after poll shows that Nebraskans support this issue by over 70%. It doesn't matter their age, gender, religious background, or political affiliation. In fact, recently, both presidential nominees this election cycle have come out in support of broad cannabis legalization efforts. While here in Nebraska, we remain just one of 2 states in the nation that have not enacted any laws regarding medical cannabis treatment. 437 and 438 are both strictly for medical use under a healthcare practitioner's guidance, with regulations that will be set forth by the Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission, along with the state legislature upon passing. The ballot initiative process provides us with an opportunity to educate and advocate for Nebraskans, and our initiatives take this responsibility very seriously. The cannabis plant has been around for over 10,000 years. It is one of the oldest plants ever cultivated by humans, and anthropological and archaeological evidence points to cannabis being used as a medicine around the world for thousands of these years. Right here in the United States, it was used as a medicine up until 1942, when greed, propaganda, and government overreach led to federal prohibition. In fact, at the time prohibition efforts were starting, the American Medical Association came out in opposition because they were using cannabis as a medicine. In the over 10,000 years that bring us to today, not a single person has fatally overdosed from cannabis. In contrast, opioids and other addicting medications, for which cannabis has been shown to be a less toxic alternative, are one of the leading causes of death every year. Alcohol has an even more staggering fatality rate of over 178,000 deaths in the US each year. With the passing of 437 and 438, patients unequivocally will be healthier and more productive citizens. They will be able to contribute and support their families, communities, and state. Voting for 437 and 438 is an opportunity for Nebraskans to voice their support for this issue and for our state to finally join the 48 other states in our nation, as well as hundreds upon thousands of countries around the world in treating people battling illnesses like patients, not criminals. It is humbling to see the many Nebraskans who have prioritized being here tonight to lend their voices in support of 437 and 438, initiatives that represent compassion and a future filled with hope and less suffering. It's my honor now to, well, I'll let the people behind me speak after our next individual. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to recognize our recognized opponent for opening remarks, Sheriff Aaron Hansen.
Thank you. I do have some prepared remarks, and I'll follow up with some off-the-cuff comments.
Can you
My name-
speak and spell your name? Oh, sorry if you're about to do that.
My name is Aaron Hansen, Aaronhanson. I am currently the Sheriff of Douglas County. Today, I stand in opposition to the adoption of Initiatives 437 and 438, which seek to contradict federal drug laws and legalize marijuana and Delta-9 THC under the guise of medicine. Initiative 437, the Medical Cannabis Patient Protection Initiative, contradicts federal law by legalizing marijuana, a federally designated Schedule I drug in all forms, including marijuana, hashish, and concentrates, and the possession of drug paraphernalia. If the initiative is adopted, state and local laws cannot restrict the use, possession, or acquisition of marijuana in the workplace, schools, or any private or public place. While a medical professional must provide a certificate of a medical condition, it is not a prescription, nor is it to be dispensed by a licensed pharmacist. The individual obtaining the certificate to possess and use cannabis does not have to be a patient of the certifying medical provider, nor are there restrictions on the type, dose, or frequency of administration. Despite the law's name, basic patient protections such as safety, purity, and that's important, or efficacy of the product are not required. To be considered a medicine, marijuana products should be dispensed in a standardized product subject to the same regulations as every prescription drug product in a manner to ensure patient safety and clinical efficacy through consistent potency and quality. FDA approval is a minimum requirement to meet this standard. Initiative 437 bypasses the proven critical patient safeguard. Initiative 438, the Medical Cannabis Regulation Initiative, legalizes a commercial marijuana industry in Nebraska in contradiction to current federal law. The initiative will facilitate possession and the commercial manufacture, distribution, delivery, and dispensing of cannabis in all forms, including marijuana, hashish, and the derivatives. The initiative allows the establishment of businesses and use of business equipment for the industrial production of any marijuana production for ingesting, inhaling, or otherwise introducing the drug into the body with no restrictions on production for medical purposes only. In addition, the initiative creates a new government agency, the Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission, whose appointed board will oversee the newly legalized cannabis industry in Nebraska. This new government entity is purportedly granted the exclusive authority to regulate the cannabis industry. The record of this hearing should accurately reflect what is being legalized by the initiative: THC, the psychoactive component of marijuana. All other components of the marijuana plant, including cannabinoid or CBD, the various cannabinoids and phytochemicals, are present in hemp, which is currently legal in Nebraska. Furthermore, the FDA-approved forms of THC and CBD, verified for purity, safety, and standardized dosing, are already available for Nebraska clinicians to prescribe to patients for whom evidence demonstrates a potential clinical benefit. The initiative seeks to establish a commercial industry for the sale of THC products under the label of medicine. These products come in a wide variety of forms other than the whole plant, including edibles, waxes, resins, and vapes, most of which are formulated to levels of THC much higher than in plants, which has about a THC level of anywhere from 18 to 95%. However, there is no validated research that high THC products are safe for anyone or efficacious for anything medical. A 2019 Colorado report found a higher THC concentration in medical dispensary products than in recreational. Current medical literature is clear. Marijuana is a drug of abuse, is physiologically and psychologically addictive, can have severe side effects, including short and long-term impairment and drug interactions, and causes clear negative effects in both individuals and society. Yet there is no doctor's prescription for dose, formulation, or frequency. The patient, once in possession of a marijuana card, can go to a dispensary and purchase anything, regardless of their physician's recommendation. No pharmacist can legally dispense unapproved THC products. The entire patient-focused system is bypassed in favor of a consumer-driven commercial industry that has no safeguards to prevent diversion of THC to unapproved users, including youth, and much less protect patient health and safety. The assertion that marijuana labeled medical is distinct from recreational marijuana is on its face a false claim. There is no difference between marijuana sold to get high and that which is sold as medical. The same marijuana companies raise, process, package, and market recreational weed and simply change the label for medicinal dispensaries. Major medical associations, including the American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, American Osteopathic Association, American Glaucoma Society, and American Society of Health System Pharmacists, all oppose the legalization of medical marijuana. Nebraska voters should follow the professional, medical, and scientific expertise of these medical professional organizations and reject the legalization of marijuana in Nebraska. I want to talk a little off the cuff. In this initiative, they talk about a maximum amount to possess of 5 ounces of cannabis. Now, this is a 12-ounce cup, and a little under half of this would be 5 ounces. And I want you to imagine this cup almost halfway full of concentrated THC. We're talking the product that has anywhere from 90 to 99% THC content. That would be legal with a doctor's note. I can tell you in modern day, if my deputies or investigators came across a cup that full of concentrated THC, that would be considered a major felony, a distribution amount. And again, I want to reiterate, these healthcare practitioner notes, they're not prescriptions. They give no direction over type, amount, method, or dose. Everything is handed over to the caregiver. The caregiver is essentially going to be the pot store owner on the corner. We see them popping up more and more in this area. Today, we lose hundreds of people to fentanyl overdoses. And many, if not most, of those fentanyl overdoses occur at the hands of facsimile pills, which are designed by the Mexican drug cartel to appear to be the same as prescription medications. At least in that case, we have the ability to try to differentiate the difference in those pills. When you're talking cannabis products, concentrated THC, you can't even come close to those type of markings for the consumer to understand the difference. I think there is an answer here, and I'm not necessarily opposed to the concept of medicinal marijuana. But I think right now the federal government is working to reschedule marijuana on the federal level. I have been a supporter of that for years. I don't think marijuana should be a Schedule I drug. I don't necessarily think it should be a Schedule III drug, but I think it should probably be somewhere at least around a 2. That would allow the FDA to test and regulate marijuana for medicinal purposes. It would allow actual doctors to prescribe it, both in terms of its usage, its methods, and its dosage. And it would allow real pharmacists to be able to test and distribute that product without the potential for higher level of abuse. Again, thank you for your time today, and I do stand opposed to initiatives 437 and 438.
Thank you. Before we start public testimony, a couple other housekeeping items. If you do have written testimony, you can provide it to the court reporter so they can accurately just transcribe your remarks. If you do have your remarks on a tablet or cell phone, Denise will have her email available and you can email those remarks to her. Completely voluntary, but if you want to make sure that she's accurately reflected what you've said today, you have the ability to do that. I am going to start with supporters of the measure. I have done now 7 of these, and I realize that some people have great penmanship, some people do not, and my reading ability can be suspect in regards to reading those names. So if I do butcher your name, I understand. It's like the first day of school in elementary school for me all over again. With the last name Benna, I have about 8 different pronunciations on any given day. So please excuse if I do mispronounce your name, and please feel free to correct me when you're on the mic. So first, and I think I should be able to get this one okay, Angela Cornett, you'll be the first to speak.
My name is Angela Cornett. Do I need to spell that? ANGELACORNETT. I am from Norfolk, Nebraska. I am a nurse, and I am here to express support for ballot measures 437 and 438. I remember the first time a patient felt comfortable enough to disclose to me in a clinical setting that he was illegally using cannabis to successfully control his seizures. That was over 10 years ago. It certainly wouldn't be the last time I would hear that cannabis was helping patients with seizures, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel disease, chronic pain, Parkinson's, or cancer. When patients told us their stories, we treated them as patients, not as criminals. Research validates these patients' anecdotes. I've watched a loved one who, after taking prescribed opioids, was brought back from the brink of death by Narcan. I have seen patients experience a variety of life-threatening conditions as a result of pharmaceutical medications. I've seen multiple patients that become so aggressive and violent on seizure medications that they became a danger to themselves and to others. Have you ever watched someone suffer brain damage or death due to seizures that were unable to be controlled by pharmaceutical medications? Nurses do. Cannabis has a versatile array of medicinal benefits and has been used as an herbal medicine since ancient times. Yet in Nebraska, we have a handful of people still staunchly opposed to allowing patients access to such a versatile plant. A plant whose side effect profile is similar to or safer than many pharmaceutical medications. People who try to convince you that cannabis is one of the most dangerous things on this planet. People who have tried at every turn to silence the second house. They direct patients to seek care from the pharmaceutical industry that has already failed to yield them adequate relief. Why is this? Is it so the right people can make money off of pharmaceutical alternatives? Heaven forbid we let patients use a God-given plant as a medicine when the right people could profit from their desire to avoid suffering. There have been 0 deaths from cannabis. Do you know what medical professionals do see? Deaths from alcohol, guns, opioids. If it was really about safety, we would have stricter control measures over some of these things. The same people who demonize cannabis for medical use cry personal freedom and individual responsibility when it comes to things like alcohol and guns, which kill hundreds of thousands of people in the US every single year. Maybe it's because the right people are making money in those industries. I started volunteering with this campaign in 2019. Since that time, I have watched as patients were forced to choose between moving to a neighboring state, continuing to suffer, or risking being charged as a criminal. Many patients have died waiting for relief in Nebraska. Patients like Lisa Kovanda, who fought even from her hospice bed for the right to be viewed as a patient, not a criminal, for using cannabis to help alleviate the suffering associated with her rare medical condition. Please stop putting profit over patients. Please stop trying to subvert the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Heidi Smith. I'd like to point out, we do not have any opponents signed in at this time. At any point that we do have an opponent signed in, they will have next to speak. So we'll continue down the supporter list.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Smith, HEIDISMITH. I am here as a proponent for ballot measures 437 and 438. In 1981, my dad was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 6. In the early 90s, my dad was prescribed a medicine to slow the progression of his MS. This medicine's side effects were awful for my dad. He was nauseous constantly. The side effects did not allow him to work, ultimately leading him to stop the medication. My dad was a farmer. As many Nebraskans know, there are no days off for farmers. They don't get sick days, and he was unable to farm with the side effects of the multiple sclerosis medication. Farming was our family's main income source, and he did what he needed to do to provide for our family. Also in the early 90s, my dad, a conservative, rule-following Republican, wrote a letter to Nebraska state officials asking for the possibility of using medical cannabis to address his symptoms. He didn't tell anyone in the family that he did that, probably because it was illegal. And as I said, he was a rule follower, so I don't know if there was any response. In 1996, he was able to plant his crops, but by harvest time, He could not walk, and the neighbors had to come with their combines to harvest for him. He passed away from multiple sclerosis in 2003 at the age of 52. Fast forward to 2020, I signed the medical cannabis petitions as soon as I heard about them. That year, in September, I also saw a news story when the very emotional mothers of kids with epilepsy learned that the Nebraska Supreme Court ruled against them, so this issue could not be on the ballot. It was devastating. I could feel that from what they were, from their reaction. When I saw that Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana was working on the ballot initiatives again in 2022, I had to advocate for relief for Nebraska patients like my dad and so many others. One thing that struck me when talking to the community was a couple from Canada. They told me that in the 1970s, they had a doctor that suggested off the record that they try cannabis for a medical condition. It worked, and the medical cannabis has now been legal in Canada for a very long time. Cannabis is not new. We are not pioneers with no examples to see what worked and what didn't work for other states and countries. While petitioning, I heard over and over and over again how medical cannabis saved my life. This is from all types of patients from all over the state. I spent most of my petitioning time in rural southeast Nebraska. I talked with veterans with PTSD, patients with multiple sclerosis or lupus or Parkinson's, cancer patients going through chemo treatments, and those with epilepsy. Many found relief because they took the risk in Nebraska to find a way to ease their pain or sickness by using cannabis. These are hardworking Nebraskans who want a good quality of life and to provide for their families. Nebraska, the good life, unless you have a medical condition, I guess. The small group of individuals who are fighting patients at every opportunity don't realize that as advocates for medical cannabis, we are advocating for them and their family members to have this medicine when they need it. That's what I know of Nebraska values. You drive and you one finger wave to everyone, even if you don't personally know them. You help your neighbor get the crops out if their farmer neighbor is sick, and you advocate for what can help your neighbors. Well, a lot of the medical marijuana discussions are about helping medical issues such as pain, seizures, and the terrible side effects of prescription medications. I cannot tell you the number of times I heard Nebraskans say, "It saved my life," because they no longer felt hopeless. They no longer were planning on how to kill themselves to alleviate their pain because the traditional medical interventions did not work. The mental health crisis in Nebraska can also be addressed if we allow Nebraskans to talk to their doctors about this option. Please vote for 437 and 438. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Shelley Gillen.
Good evening. My name is Shelley Gillen, SHELLEY-GILLEN, and I am here in favor of measures 437 and 438. Regulated medical cannabis is safe. Regulated medical cannabis has never been the cause of any deaths. Do you know what's not safe and does cause deaths? Seizures. Seizures can kill. Seizures have caused our son to have multiple occurrences of black eyes, head staples, stitches, concussions, knocked out teeth, broken nose, broken jaw, and an almost fatal liver laceration. Seizures have forced us to call 911, have landed him in the ER, and have had him admitted for hospital stays countless times. Seizures have traumatized our entire family. Our son, Will, has siblings who act like first responders and parents who vigilantly check on his breathing throughout the night and in the morning to be sure he hasn't died from an undetected fatal seizure. We started our medical cannabis journey 11 years ago when Will was only 11 years old. He is now 22, and by God's good grace, he is still alive. Never did we think, though, that it would take this long. Never did we think we'd have to beg, plead, cry, and share Will's heartbreaking story countless times, only to continue to be told no by heartless lawmakers. Lawmakers who would avoid us when they'd see us approaching them. Lawmakers who would tell us to move. They would want us to leave our home, our families, our support system, his medical team, his already established state benefits, and start all over. All of this would take years to do and would drain us so financially that we wouldn't be able to provide any kind of decent quality of life for Will. Lawmakers who would tell us to give him medical cannabis anyway, to do it illegally, and to have us risk losing Will to CPS, or now APS. They want us to risk his health by giving him something unregulated and unsafe. Lawmakers who would pass the buck and tell us to go speak with our federal representatives. And then those federal reps would also pass the buck and tell us to go back to the state reps, tossing our lives back and forth like a political football. It is not unbeknownst to us that this issue is bigger than just Will. It's about our most vulnerable Nebraska citizens, those who are ill and or disabled. They are the ones who deserve better, a legal and safe option at a better quality of life, and it's time to have their voices to be heard. It's time to vote for measures 437 and 438 before they themselves may run out of time.
Thank you. Next, we have Joy of the ACLU of Nebraska.
Good evening. My name is Joy Katharima, JoyKathurima, and I'm here on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska in support of the ballot measures 437 and 438. Contemporary scientific evidence confirms the countless stories of the therapeutic benefits of medical marijuana, which has provided unique relief for serious conditions when no other medicine is as effective or free of side effects. Millions of Americans nationwide now use medical marijuana as recommended by their doctors. Unfortunately, despite the scientifically proven benefits of medical marijuana, Nebraska continues to ignore the facts and criminalize medical marijuana. Passing measures 437 and 438 will benefit Nebraskans from a medical standpoint as well as a legal standpoint. The ACLU of Nebraska offers its full support for ballot measures 437 and 438.
Thank you. Next, we have Edward Williams.
Edward Williams, EDWARDWILLIAMS, and I'm Vice Chairman of Legal Marijuana Now Nebraska and a disabled Nebraska Navy veteran. And I'd like to speak on behalf of the two ballot initiatives. I have petitioned across the state for many years and talked to veterans and other citizens of our fine state. And I have heard many uses for medical cannabis. Some of the ones the veterans tell me are even almost unbelievable. I've talked to veterans that are using it for burn pit injuries and also for PTSD, of course, besides other skeletal injuries, arthritis, and a myriad of other things. This amazing plant has been used for over 5,000 years medicinally, and only as recently as 1937, it was made illegal as a medicine in the US and hasn't been approved since. I can't see why this shouldn't be allowed. We are supposed to be the second house and supposed to be able to readily recommend new laws that should be in effect. And I believe we're doing a good job in doing so, but we're not being heard. And it would be nice to be heard. And it looks like if we're be able to be voted on, it will be. And that's about it. I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Marcy Reed. Or am I saying Maria?
No, you're right,
Is it-
Marcy.
where's Marcy? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
See, sometimes a C and an I can be an A. So.
I know. I get it spelled every way. Okay, my name's Marcy Reed, MARCIEREED. I truly do not understand why there are people so against getting medical cannabis legal in Nebraska. Have you ever seen a child have a seizure and thought, oh my gosh, that poor child? Have you ever had someone close to you with cancer in so much pain that it was hard to sit there and watch? I have an 11-year-old with ADHD and epilepsy. He takes so much medicine daily that it scares me, knowing that he is a growing boy with all that medicine. Why can't he be given the option to take something natural instead of the man-made medicine made out of who knows what? What is it? Why is it taking so long for Nebraska to get with the rest of the states? Legalizing medical cannabis isn't going to make people want to start smoking it. We are not going to be like Colorado. We are fighting for medical, not recreational. Those that want marijuana products can already get it. It's those people like my son that can't access it. To make matters worse, they are coming after us like we are bad people and did something wrong. What would you do for your child? You fight for what's best for them. Who's going to take care of him or care if he develops kidney problems or something else from the medicine he's on now? It's me. I'm the one that cares. I'm the one that has to deal with it, not you. So I will continue to fight for what I believe is best for my kid. Do we really even have a voice in the state if they don't want to listen to us? Thank you.
Next, we have Leah Post.
I have a copy for you, if that would help.
My name is Leah Post, Liapost. I am here in support of 437 and 438. How Republican politics work in Nebraska. Pete gives Pillen's campaign $100,000. Pillen gives Pete's campaign $100,000. Pillen appoints Pete to the Senate. Pillen spends $1.5 million of his own money on his campaign. Pete spends $1.2 million of his own money on federal races and committee. Bob Evnen, our Secretary of State, paid $60,000 for his own campaign, with Pete contributing $7,500. Hilgers, our Attorney General, was appointed by Pillen. Prior to appointment, Hilger's top contributors were, of course, Pete, pharmaceutical research, Anheuser-Busch, Associated Beverage Distributors, Fiserv, South Wine and Spirits, and Suzanne Geis for legislature. You know, the ex-state senator, Suzanne Geis, who had a failed attempt for mayor, but was hired by Hilgers for a brand new position created specifically at the Attorney General's office. And let's not forget Hilgers contributor Julie Slama for legislature, who is married to one of the attorneys representing John Kewen in the lawsuit against medical cannabis. His name is Andrew Lagrone, and as a state senator, his claim to fame was reading Yertle the Turtle on the floor of the legislature. Then we have John Kewen, leader of the nonprofit Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, Nebraska. He's another ex-state senator whose campaign Pete contributed to, but more importantly, a non-practicing veterinarian once appointed by Pete to Nebraska's State Board of Health. This Republican landscape of money, power, nepotism, incestuous business dealings, abuse, and political whoring is not my world. But it is clear who excels in this environment. Just follow the money. Amazingly, I figured all this out, and I'm just a patient with a disabling illness. I'm just a mom of a disabled adult. I'm just a proud user of medical cannabis illegally in the state of Nebraska. The Nebraska legislator has had over a decade to address the legalization of the cannabis plant medicinally, and they have failed. Our state kills patients. Leading this march of death is Pete, who has contributed over $7 million and is credited in an NPR article stating his high percentage of self-funding leaves the Ricketts as the family that has spent the most money in the 21st century broadly funding Nebraska's political campaigns and causes. Pete's own parents have given at least $4.5 million according to NADC records, yet they have a niece, Rona Ann Bremer, a 22-year-old with 2 young children who was murdered while she was pregnant. Her head was found by a hunter and sent to a sheriff's office. Her murder is still unsolved. I think if I had the Ricketts' unlimited money, I would leave no stone unturned for my family. But I know I'm nothing like the Ricketts family, and I thank God for it. You see, I read Pete's daddy's book, and my father certainly wasn't absent or alcoholic or Catholic. Why does the Ricketts family sense of justice only apply to patients like myself? Is this topic, like the death penalty, so affected by Pete's personal views, he refuses to do the will of the people and will stop at nothing to keep medical cannabis from patients? I'm sure I'll be in trouble for speaking my truth today because Nebraskan Republican public officials don't like the truth. I only hope my punishment for refusing to be an opioid addict, a benzodiazepine addict, a sedative addict, or dead isn't being forced to work on Pillen's pig farm because it kills people. Cannabis doesn't.
Next, we have Dominic Gillen. And I did skip Judy. Judy, I will get back to you after this. I just skipped you on the paper. So Dominic, please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Dominic Gillen. It's Dominic Gillen. For the record, I think it's interesting to note that for all 3 of these hearings, there's been no opposition speaking. And I find it interesting that the Secretary of State couldn't find it in his time to be here tonight. My name is Dominic Gillen, and I'm here tonight to speak in favor of passage of medical cannabis initiatives 437 and 438. My wife and I have a severely disabled adult son who suffers from a rare seizure disorder called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. He endures multiple seizure types on a daily basis, and as a result, it makes treatment extremely difficult. Over the years, he's been on dozens of FDA-approved medicines, many of which have had side effects that have been debilitating and had little to no impact on his seizures. Our most recent med change resulted in a 2-week hospital stay and the very real fear that he was going to die. It was 11 years ago, November, that our family approached our state senator at a town hall asking for legal and safe medical cannabis treatment for our then 11-year-old son. In fact, her first bill was named Will's Law. He's now 22. What we have witnessed on this journey have been patients, caregivers, families, and volunteers uniting together in the common goal to have legal and safe access to medical cannabis as an option to all people of Nebraska. During the past 11 years, we have seen the country pass us by in terms of access. Today, 47 states have some sort of medical cannabis legislation, and in Nebraska, we have always been met with hardened hearts and lack of compassion. For the last 11 years, I've prayed daily for an unhardening of hearts of the powerful opposition, but up to now, to no avail. We have been forced to turn to the initiative process. On our third try, we finally are on the ballot. We are in a position to give people what they want, the people what they want, a chance to vote and have their voices actually heard. But even that hasn't deterred the political machine from doing everything in its power to deny the will of the people. They speak of voter integrity, which in reality is an attempt at massive voter disenfranchisement. The scrutiny under which this campaign has been judged compared to other petitions is unprecedented. Why didn't 320 voters asking for their names to be removed from the Ricketts-led abortion petition not warrant a fraud investigation? How many hundreds or thousands of other voters felt misled? Why didn't the alleged fraud on the voter ID petition in 2022 warrant an investigation? It's very hard not to think that it's because these issues are backed by the political machine, a machine that fancies itself above the normal rules. The press, I wish and hope, needs to demand answers to these questions. I pray that the story can someday be told of just how nasty and cruel this witch hunt has been for some of the most loving, caring people that I've ever met in my entire life. They are earth angels for our son Will and countless others, and yet they are having their lives and their integrity destroyed by a state that will resort to the cruelest of tactics to meet their goals. This has been a true grassroots effort, led by patients, families, and caring volunteers. The attempts to steamroll this effort is a black mark on this state. This is truly a David versus Goliath story that needs to be told. In a moment of despair, I was reminded by one of my children to remember how that story ended. I will continue to pray for hearts to be unhardened, and I implore all of our supporters to remember, don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Wayman. Judy? I'll leave that open if they just stepped out for a second. And we'll go next to Shannon. I tried.
That's all right. All right, it's Shannon Coriel, SHANNONCORYELL. Over these past 3 efforts at getting medical cannabis on the ballot as a volunteer and testifying for bills in the legislature before that, I have met some really incredible people. Krista, of course, who has worked tirelessly on this. All of the amazing volunteers who are now family to me. All of the people who keep coming back to sign petitions, either because it would help them or a loved one, or because it could have helped a loved one who is now passed. They don't want to see any other Nebraskans suffer needlessly. Or the compassionate people who don't need it, but care about their fellow Nebraskans. Just the other day at a yard sign event, a man approached to tell me that he had just finished chemotherapy and was so happy to finally get the chance to vote for medical cannabis. It has been frustrating to see the hurdles that have been put in front of us each year, but it's not something we just give up on. We are all way too invested in making this happen. We may have started this hoping to help one person, but now all these years later, we carry the names of patients and their family members in our hearts who need us to keep fighting. We are long overdue to help ease some suffering in our state and truly be Nebraska nice. So I hope everyone votes for initiatives 437 and 438 if you haven't already. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble reading the first name, but the last name Anderson. $441.
That's me.
No.
I thought I was just signing in.
Okay.
I wasn't gonna testify. But I'm
You-
definitely for.
Okay. I think that means you just testified. So, but you had circled yes on here, so that's fine. Before I turn the page, Judy Wayman, Weyman. Okay. Next, Angelic Phillips.
Good evening. My name is Angelique Phillips, ANGELIC PHILIPS. I'm here today in support of both ballot measures 437 and 438. I won't take a lot of time. I just jotted down a few notes. I actually got off of work and came here, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking it's so ridiculous that I have to come in and say this when, like, I feel like the state and the country has already spoken that it's time to progress forward on medical and recreational marijuana. But anyway, so our nation overall has determined that marijuana isn't the big bad gateway drug that it was once projected to be. Rather, states are legalizing it and the country is moving forward without us. A prime example of the way this is happening is the loophole that allows for the product THCA to be sold at local stores like Cannabis Factory, Habits, and 42 Degrees. This product can get a recreational user every bit as high as good old Colorado marijuana. Yet Nebraska laws prevent doctors from being able to assist their patients who need it for medical purposes. The fact that it is in Nebraska, one can legally use the product to get stoned, but doesn't have access to it to assist with pain or seizures. I just don't understand how our state leaderships reconcile that. It's time for the state to move forward with the rest of the country, and ballots 437 and 438 is at least a good start to that. So I would urge the state to push this forward. Thank you.
Next, we have Genevieve.
My name is Genevieve Zwicky, GenevievZwicky. I'm a 30-year-old medical cannabis patient with a multisystemic genetic disorder. This means that my illness impacts multiple body systems, and my symptoms will only increase in severity as I age until I die. All of my life experiences have been touched by pain, unintended and sometimes dangerous weight loss, a decent dose of fear for the future, and so many more difficult situations and sensations. I say that I am a medical cannabis patient both because in actuality I am, and because I would be one of the patients to benefit from medical cannabis being legalized. All of my providers know that I use cannabis to manage a vast array of symptoms, and I've never once had a medical professional express concern. In fact, the responses tend to be in support of my choice or even advice on how to increase the efficacy of the medication. When thinking about what I wanted to say, I thought about some of the approaches used for persuasive speaking, such as ethos, pathos, and logos. Ultimately, I decided to lean more toward a narrative. I wanted to tell a small portion of my story because I deserve to be heard, and I'm willing to be a voice that represents the many who can't be here to tell their own important stories. I want everyone in this room and across any media outlets covering this meeting to see my tears, to hear my voice crack, and to bear witness to my suffering. Each day I wake in agony. I need help with my activities of daily living like dressing, hygiene, and eating. I attend multiple medical appointments each week, sometimes multiple appointments in a day. I have so many specialists, I can't even keep track of them all without assistance, and I already take so many pharmaceutical medications that my med planner is now overflowing. I have a medical device implanted in my chest that dumps directly into my heart. I have tried taking Marinol, also known as pharmaceutical THC, but that didn't do anything to touch my symptoms. I need whole plant medicine, and I need my caregivers to be able to assist me in accessing and preparing cannabis when my symptoms are so bad that all I can do is curl up in a ball and moan. I can't move to help myself, and when I've gone to the emergency department or urgent care, I've been sent home as I'm too high of a risk for complication or death for hospitals to justify taking me on so that they can keep their assets safe. What about me? What about what I have to offer the world? At the end of the day, I try to rest, but I'm still plagued by excruciating pain as I lay in my bed or on my couch. My caregiver is paid for 112 hours a week, but works much more than that. Even with all of the love and support in the world, my circumstances are not going to change. However, not having access to legal cannabis is something that could change. While I recognize that my life may seem as sad, I do not tell you this for sympathy. I tell you so that you know what a powerhouse I am. Despite being so ill, I am a single parent to a child with the same illness. I'm a licensed mental and behavioral health professional in the state of Nebraska. I have a college degree and multiple other certifications. I am furthering change in the industrial medical complex, as well as seeking FDA approval for a drug that is administered daily for a cost, but is considered experimental by insurance companies. I am the very first person in the United States to receive full insurance coverage for that experimental drug, and from government insurance at that. I fight with everything that I have in me. And while I get tired, I do not give up. I am also not alone. Despite how much it hurts, so many brave souls have been vulnerable about the most intimate details of our lives because those pushing against us have made it necessary to do so. We are using our personal lives to fight against lawmakers who are supposed to fight for us. Lawmakers who look the other way when they are shown our suffering and who plug their ears when we ask if they represent their constituents' interests. For many years, we have been tired of waiting for lawmakers in Nebraska to catch up with us and the rest of the country while we figure out the right forms and language to make things happen ourselves. Now we are shouting that we have surpassed you and are no longer waiting for you to meet us where we are at. The public has spoken. We met the requirements to get on the ballot. We, the people, are demanding access to our medicine. These are no longer the times of reefer madness, but of cannabis being a tool for healing and symptom management. Elected officials, I would like to remind you that you work for us, the public. We have made our desires and our intentions clear multiple times. Why won't you listen? We see you. We are watching you. We are using today's world, which is immersed in technology, to pull back the veil and reveal that lawmakers are not working for us in the ways they promise to or say that they already are. You are showing the public the truth all on your own. Do you not understand that pursuing this specific group of people will demonize you? Do you not see that you are poking a bear with more strength and stamina than you have ever known or could ever hope to come across again? If needed, we will pursue you elites with the same fervor that you have pursued us. We are literally fighting for our lives.
The number of lives lost to opioid addictions because they are not given an alternative, and those lost to suicide secondary to lack of pain and symptom management is insurmountable. We cannot continue to look away, and neither can you, because we see you. If the length and quality of our lives isn't enough to convince you, one has to wonder what is driving your decisions. You are doing a disservice to our community in a number of ways, not only by increasing the suffering of patients that need and deserve access to cannabis, but the community as a whole is being blocked from receiving an influx of funds which could be distributed to many incredibly worthy services and programs. Instead, you line your campaign funds and maybe even your pockets with what is essentially blood money coming from sources that would directly benefit from medical cannabis not being made legal. If you've heard nothing else, hear this. We can do this the hard way or the easy way, but it's going to happen. I'm like a dog with a bone, and I will not go away. If you aren't afraid of me now, maybe you should learn a little bit about what happened to the last provider that denied me access to the care I needed. The provider was in breach of contract with Medicare and almost lost their entire business when they tried to push little old me around. You don't need to be worried about me, your superiors do. I will go over your head until you get marching orders to support your constituents. Look at this face. Look at their faces. Remember them. If you don't get the medicine that we need to us, you'll be seeing us again and again and again until the fight is over and we have won. Full stop. 437, 438. Thank you for your time.
And because I didn't give you a 1-minute prompt, I let you finish.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is the conclusions of the list that I currently have. Is there anyone in the audience that didn't? Oh, looks like I have another one coming in. Cindy. I thought you were going to watch the live stream.
I was watching at home.
Oh, okay.
And then I came. Was glad to get here in time. My name is Cindy Maxwell Ostick. That's CINDYMAXWELL-OSTDIEK. And I'm a proponent of ballot measure number 437, Nebraska Medical Cannabis Patient Protection Initiative, and ballot measure number 438, Nebraska Medical Cannabis Regulation Initiative. As a volunteer who gathered signatures for these initiatives, and in previous years as well, I played a very small part in this amazing effort to serve our neighbors needing this medical care. And I admire the organizers' hard work. I admire their commitment, and I thank them and the many Nebraskans who helped persevere to get this on the ballot. I'm not an expert on medical cannabis, but I shared this similar testimony with the Nebraska Legislature's Judiciary Committee in 2023 and wanted to share it today as well. As an independent who ran for legislature in West Omaha's District 4 in 2022, I talked with thousands of voters from all parties and backgrounds. And at that time, medical cannabis was going through a petition process at that time. I carry so many of those stories on my heart. I wanted to specifically share about two gentlemen in the hope that their stories may impact the passage of these measures. Many veterans spoke in favor of medical cannabis when they talked with me, but one in particular talked about his pride serving his country. He felt strongly about following the law, and he was so disappointed Nebraska's elected officials had not addressed this important medical need for his PTSD. I think of another neighbor whenever I drive by his house. He has a garden and decorations and window chimes by his front door, and they signify breast cancer awareness. They're all pink ribbon. He is a widower, and he was distraught, talking with me and telling me the story about his wife struggling without medical cannabis while she battled cancer. He hoped no one else's loved ones would endure the pain that she did. These are only two of very many emotional pleas I heard from my community, and Nebraskans have been asking for this important legislation for many years now. I hope voters will choose to help their neighbors that have these medical needs, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. My name is Tom Becca, Tom, T-O-M-B-E-C-K-A. I had not planned on talking. I just came really to observe tonight. But after hearing some of this testimony, I'd like to maybe offer a slightly different perspective. Last January, after fighting it for about 23 years or so, I had bladder cancer. And I was able to keep it under control for the most part for 23 years. But it got so bad that they had to take out my bladder and my prostate. I currently have a plastic bag attached to my stomach that collects my urine. After spending about 6 days in the hospital, when they released me, they gave me a prescription for OxyContin. I refused it. I didn't want to take it. I went and got high dose of acetaminophen instead, and I dealt with some pain, but I didn't want to mess with the opiates. Anybody that is against medical marijuana, if a doctor prescribes it, you can refuse it. You don't have to take it, but don't deprive these fine people here of a medicine that could help them live their lives in a normal capacity. You know, I mean, it just boggles my mind how this has been supported in so many other states, and yet here in Nebraska, we won't do anything about it. They fight it tooth and nail. I mean, we have a senator, you know, a former governor that thinks that medical marijuana is going to kill children. I will tell you, more people have died from McDonald's onions than have died from medical marijuana. It's just ludicrous. Just common sense would tell you that, you know, this is between a doctor and the patient. And if the patient doesn't want to take it, they don't have to. And that's all I wanted to say. But I thank you for your time and for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. I've reached the end of all the signers. People wanted to, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify either in support, opposition, or in a neutral capacity? With that, I would invite Krista Eggers to provide closing comments for the supporters.
My name is Krista Eggers, Cristaeggers. And I'm going to first speak on behalf of Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana. I want to thank everyone who took time out of their day to be here tonight to share their stories, to share some of the most vulnerable and painful and horrific parts of their life. I can't imagine anyone who could sit here and listen to these patients and parents and loved ones and say that their lives aren't worth fighting for. I can't imagine a person who can turn away when they have the ability and the opportunity to take care of their neighbors, to take care of individuals in the state who are hurting so badly and have been fighting so long. The people have spoken. They have spoken time and time and time again. They have spent countless hours, months, and years advocating to be on the right side of the law. Nebraskans have a choice. They can vote with compassion and empathy, or they can turn away. And those that turn away I want you to know that the blood of the patients in this state is on their hands. Nebraskans are asking for you to vote for 437 and 438. I want to ask if you'll maybe let something a little bit non-traditional happen. There are many, many individuals that because of their health conditions could not be here tonight and their voices could not be heard. And I am wondering if you will allow 30 seconds for the individuals in this room to name those people.
It's your time.
I would like to ask the individuals here tonight to be a voice for all of those that they have been advocating for so long. And so I would like you, whether it's in your heart, silently, or out loud, to name the people who you are fighting for, and name the people and the stories of what these initiatives and who these initiatives are for. Danica, Ben, Mackenzie, Jayen, 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 Amy, Denise, Denise, Connor. She said David. I said Connor.
Wendy.
Jay.
Sean. Sarah. Ryan.
Say again.
Xander.
Justin.
Tina. And I know we could sit here for hour after hour and day after day and continue sharing the names and the stories of those that initiatives 437 and 438 will provide hope and a better future for. And I'm asking all Nebraskans to vote for 437 and 438. Thank you.
That concludes this hearing on initiatives 437 and 438. Thank you to all that came to testify today. Thank you to the proponents and the opponents, and thank you to all for joining us this evening. Thank you also to those who submitted written comments to our office. We received 25 comments supporting initiative 437, 438, and 0 comments opposing 437 and 438 by today's deadline. These comments will be added to the public record. A couple of thank yous. Thank you to Jackie from our office, Mia Sanderson, and my wife who helped relieve Mia so that my staff could get the rest they deserve as we're getting very close to the election. Thank you to UNO for providing this facility so we were able to have this in Omaha today. And finally, please remember the reason that we're having all of these hearings is because all 6 initiatives and referendums that have been certified for the ballot will be voted on November 5th. So please remember to vote on November 5th or earlier if you so choose. Your ballot will be waiting for you. Please cast it. This hearing is adjourned.